Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Trade Trade Group, and this is your end of day recap for October 10th, Tuesday. Turnaround Tuesday was not a turnaround Tuesday today. Very nice price action today. A little bit of choppiness there in the afternoon, but altogether, you could see that there's a lot more green on the screen in terms of names that went up today, and some impressive price action for the day. Other areas kind of fizzled a little bit. We will touch upon a couple of those areas, but first things first, risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. So themes of the day, definitely stronger breadth, right? That is an indicator that I talk about quite a bit. We have something that looks at, it's what I refer to just as market breadth, but it looks at up volume versus down volume. There's definitely been a change of tone since we entered October. It's just been a bit better. We saw a lot of just selling pressure in September, as well as a good portion of August too. It just felt like there was a lot of distribution, and you could feel it and you could see it in the breadth. There's just on a day-to-day basis, not every single day, but on average in September, we just saw a lot more names going down versus going up. Starting to, we've seen that improve. Does it carry all the way through the month of October? I don't have a crystal ball. We know that the seasonality is stronger in October. We know that sentiment got pretty washed out, and we know that there's a lot of cash on the sidelines. We also know, there's been some tweets out about hedge funds getting, pretty massively short, and all of these things are, have lined up to be, in favor of market bulls for now. And we'll see if that changes. Now, just because those factors are in place, that doesn't mean there can't be something else that kind of derails this. So, you have to stay on your toes, be nimble, depending on where your time frames are, take profits in some trades, and stay nimble so that if those names that you like, after they've got a little bit extended, if they come in a little bit, you could begin to kind of add back, right? I was talking about that midday today. I took an extra target in Meta today, which I'll go over that chart in just a second. But the only reason why I did that is because, hey, I'm like, it's kind of extended, and at some point we're going to get a red day, and I want to have extra, I want to have dry powder ready to go in some names, so I can do that. So let's dig into the technicals. As always, I start with the S&P chart, or start with the index charts, just to kind of give you some visualization of what's going on with all the stocks, and then we'll go through some single stocks and come out with some observations that I thought were interesting through the day. So S&P, this was one of my first questions of the day, was were we going to be able to break into the October value area? We did. So very nice move here. Now, what was resistance becomes support, and 43.69.75 is something that I'm watching. Price act, even though we didn't finish on the high or near the highs, we still stayed above the 5-period moving average and the 20-day moving average, right? We still have the 50-day moving average to get through, but this is nice. And we could also see, wouldn't surprise me if price does actually come back out of here and digest a little bit. These are all possible, reasonable scenarios that could happen. Would I love it if we continue to progress through this value area? Sure, right? 1 hour chart, we've been trending, right? That's the one thing that's been, well, not just the one thing, but that's another thing that was different as we came into this week. Both the S&P and the Qs started the week above value, right? Last week we started inside and went lower, right? So for now we're trending above the value area. Let's talk about the Qs. So again, I mentioned that level in the S&P. I think that's interesting to watch. Qs, the bullish 80% rule is in effect right now for the month of October, right? We started the month below the value area. We've entered the value area. Now that we've entered, you could see this green box over here that says bullish 80% rule. What that means is there's an 80% chance, again, not 100% chance, there's an 80% chance that price goes all the way through from one side of the value area to the other by the end of the month. All right, so I'm still long some Qs. I did take some profits, and if we come back and we fill in here a little bit, I'm leaving room to basically re-add in here. But I will go on that side of what my indicator tells me, which is bullish 80% rule. Now, did we hit a little bit of short-term resistance today? We did. We took out this 1 hour, we've got a couple, we've got 3 of these actually lining up here. Again, they're not long-term, they're not that significant, these verging point of controls, because I'm looking at the 1 hour chart, but they could act as like some speed bumps, right? And we did hit this one. This was I think this was the 10 o'clock hour. We took out this level and we moved back. So yeah, I mean, that's these verging point of controls are essentially telling you where, when they're above the price action, it's telling you where there's some overhead supply, right? And we stalled a little bit, right? So there's some sellers, right, that came up here. Again, all logical things. And again, it's nice to know where those levels line up, where there was a lot of volume previously that we have not revisited, right? That arises from this point of control from a couple weeks ago from this value area, and certainly it works. Now, IWM, which has been the wild card, I want to start with the daily chart. Right. This actually, made a nice move today, and I think it's still outperformed, right? Where did IWM finish for the day? 1.13. The microcap's even better today, up 1.45%. So much better than the Qs and the S&P, which were only up about 0.5%. So this is a nice move from the lows. Would I want to be taking profits here? Yeah, I think so. This is not the strongest area of the market. I don't expect a major reversal here. A bounce, sure, and we've got a nice bounce that's happening here. Also note, there's a verging point of control. We got to last week's point of control installed, right? And that was something that I mentioned earlier. I believe I posted this chart on Twitter. That's exactly where we went to. So, the MarketWebs indicator giving you very good signals really helps when you know where there's that overhead resistance, so that you can kind of stay grounded, right? Because it's tough when everything is moving fast, right? There's a lot of FOMO, right? In different trading rooms, on Twitter, right? Everybody starts to see all these stocks moving up, and it's good to have a game plan on days like this where things are moving fast, right? And there's a lot of momentum and strong breath, right? To have that game plan, before the market opens is really helpful, and to know where your short-term resistance is as well, right? Those can kind of, help you preserve and lock in the most profit. I was talking with Joel from Benzinga earlier. I'm on his, to every Tuesday, I do the closing print with him. And we were talking about, all this geopolitical issues that are going on right now. And that's not the right word to phrase it, but you know what I mean. Everything that's going on in the Middle East. One of the things that I always look at is what oil is doing whenever there's a major situation going on there. I talked about this in yesterday's video as well as on Twitter. 86.34, right? I mean, we had such a big move to the downside. We've bounced up to resistance, and so far have not been able to get back into the value area. And energy stocks I didn't even really look at energy stocks for the most part today. They didn't do much, right? XLE was up 10 basis points. Again, it's just fighting. It's got a lot of overhead resistance. So it may take, if it's really strong, it will be able to get through it. But again, a little bit of digestion from where it came from, which was $84. This is up at 88, right? That makes sense to me, right? That these things are holding in there. The defense names too, which again, I continue to watch, but they weren't, they started off strong, but they gave back a lot of profits. Some of them finished in the green a little bit. Some of them finished in the red. Lockheed Martin, which had a big day yesterday, digested a little bit and actually finished a little bit lower. RTX, which is got so beaten up from where this has come from a couple months ago, had some gains to it, but certainly didn't seem like it had the momentum today. DRS is the name that I did get involved in. This didn't close on the highs either, but I do like the chart pattern, and I think it's a nice breakout here. This is a weapons, it's a systems name. It's evolved, and I talked about this in yesterday's video. So I was watching it, and I said I don't like to just watch names. If I had a signal in them, I want to be involved in them. They supply defense electronic systems, reconnaissance surveillance, target acquisition, battlefield systems, mobility, and armor systems. I think this is a logical place to kind of be in, and I will stay in this, and I may even add to it if it checks back in here someplace, as long as it manages to to hold in there pretty well. Next, I wanted to talk about some of the techniques. All right, so here's what my watch list looks like. I put this together every weekend, and then I kind of add to the watch list as the week goes on, and then of course we have our focus list too. The focus list has done really well, and we can go through some of those focus names. I'll start with Meta and Google. By the way, those are a part of the XLC ETF. I've mentioned this quite a bit in these videos, so I'm not going to repeat everything here. But between Google and Meta, this makes up close to 50% of this ETF. This, believe it or not, I think is one of the best looking sector charts out there. I think there's XLK is another one that I've mentioned before, but this is not revealing itself yet if it's going to get over and out and get close to new highs. I think XLC is the closest you have right now to getting out to new highs for the year. So it's right there. It's very close. Watch 6807. And then if you look at those two components, Meta is the one that I've been all over and got involved as soon as this thing broke out of its value area. You could see what I did today, right? So I took this target. This is one of the last things I did. I said, my ultimate price target is 328. So I'm like, hey, I'll take a target at 325, right? An hour later, I was able to get back in just at 107. And that was the last trading that I did for the day because I just didn't, I wanted to watch the price action. I thought things might get a bit choppy. They were certainly choppy, but, hey, I took a target at 325.60. Now I can add a little bit back which I did at 320, right? That's what I was referring to in the beginning of this video about being nimble, taking targets, having some dry powder, because you just don't know what's going to happen with this tape, especially when you've got, when we've got all this headline risk that's on the tape that could kind of change things quite a bit. All right, so that's the story there. And again, where am I coming up with 328? Right, that's the level, that's the version point of control on the weekly chart. Google, which I covered in yesterday's video too, Google actually finished down on the day, and I thought this was kind of interesting. It was not able to break out of the value area. Watch 138.62, but it tells me it's not ready to break out yet. Right, just like we saw, these value areas will give you some hints, right? Just like we saw in the beginning of the month, right? We just weren't ready to break into the value area quite yet. So I don't know. So Google may not be ready yet, but I know where I would look for a next leg higher, and that's above 138.62. And I kind of thought that was interesting today because the great eight names that I call them, I throw in eight, but many of them were down on the day today. They did not have the momentum for the day. Amazon did well, which I traded a little bit in the beginning of the day. Meta, we already went over. Nvidia is okay, and Tesla did okay today too, but Apple was down on the day. Microsoft finished down on the day, and Netflix was the underperformer of that group. Nvidia looks, I've been saying this for the last week. I'm like, it looks okay, right? It's been kind of grinding higher. The problem is it's got resistance over here, and that's at 462.57. And you don't know, and whenever you see something that might look like a head and shoulders, it's not a head and shoulders unless it breaks the neckline, because a lot of times you see something that looks like a head and shoulders and it ends up not working that way. However, we do know that we've got some resistance there at 462.57. So as much as I like the company, it's not been the best name in the group. Some of the best names in the group have been Synopsys, right, which has been breaking out to new highs. Cadence, right, that broke to new highs, right? So again, if names make it out to their new highs or all-time highs, I think like these two names have done, I mean, that's some really nice strength to it, right? Other names that have not been able to do that yet, right? I would still keep an eye on them, but just know that they're not there's other stronger areas right now. So that's the story there. Tesla's also at a very crucial area. It's made a nice move over the last week. But these are small, this has been a small grinding move, right? Now comes the heavy lifting for Tesla, right? That comes at 265.82. Is it going? So the big question right now, and I don't have the answer to this, and this is why I pay attention to the price action. Is it going to make a third lower high or a second lower high? First one, second one, or is it going to be able to break out? Right? Where's my level to watch? It's right there, top of value, 265.82, right? When you plan your trades out like this and have levels, right, you know where you want to be long versus where you want to be short. Now, again, Meta was a nice one, was a better setup, in my opinion, right? Which I was stalking the move out of value for, a good couple of days. But this, I knew that this had the potential to be a really nice trade because the price action was so bottled up and so coiled, right? The price action was tighter there. So I mentioned that the Magnificent Eight some of them did okay, actually did fairly well, but that wasn't really where the momentum was today. Where the momentum was today in some of the high short interest names, it felt like there was a lot of short covering on the tape today, right? So one of the worst areas of this market, I'm sorry to say this because some people do like this area, but it is what it is. I mean, look at this chart, right? This has been one of the worst areas. Look at the volume today. Huge volume. Maybe the short-term bottom is in for solar stocks. This was a nice move, 5.7% today. Again, does it get me really excited about this group? No, because it's in a downtrend. But could it bounce more? Sure, absolutely, right? And a lot of names, like Wayfair saw a little bit of calls today. Just a lot of names with high short interest, right? They were kind of, it makes sense. People don't talk too much about call activity and like why it's useful, right? Wayfair is not a name that I really want to go long, but I understand why somebody buys calls in this. It's got such a high short interest that if the shorts have to cover, right, maybe you want a piece of the action, and this way you can only lose, the most that you can lose is the premium in the call option, right? That's a nice way to exit. That's a nice way to use options for something that I don't view Wayfair as a very strong company. Would I own it in my IRA or long-term account? No, there's better there's better names than Wayfair. But it could get really exciting for a couple days when shorts have to cover something that has 19, 20% short interest. So what happens? We see call activity on the tape. Sure, because if these names want to go, they're going to go up pretty decently, the more shorts cover. And I think we know that story from what happened in 2020 with names with high short interest. So you'll see periods of that when the shorts just when the hedge funds just get way over the tips of their skis with shorts, and then they've got to go and cover these names. Let me just go through a couple other names. SMCI, I was pleasantly surprised at this. This is a name that I've been, I went back to because I made some money in about a month ago with this thing on this move higher, I believe. And then I got back involved in this again. So I was able to take some profits in this. And the last, I'm looking for one more price target up to 321, right? And that's the 1 hour VPOC in this one. I'm going to just keep going with a couple names. Celsius has been a nice name to hold through Pepsi's earnings, right? Made the turn. I had this on as a day trade yesterday. I decided to hold a piece of the trade that I had on yesterday, and this thing was up over 5%. So very, very nice move there. A couple other names that I was watching for today, which I own this in my longer term account. This is the TTG trend portfolio. Didn't close that well today. Real nice. And if you were long this, right, this is a good example of why you, in my opinion, you take some profits. Again, you don't have to take the whole trade off, but you could take 25% or 50% of the trade off because this thing traded all the way up to 42.72. If you took some profits, you're not going to catch the absolute high, most likely, but let's say you took some profits around 42 or 42.50. If you still like the name, now you could put that target back $1.50 lower, right? So you just give yourself so much flexibility. Because this we'll see how this goes, but this name was kind of tricky in here. so it doesn't surprise me that it was tricky, that it didn't close on the highs. It just doesn't seem like it wants to. Again, maybe I'm reading in a little bit too much into the price action. It had a nice couple of days, but all through here, it just took so long for this thing to turn. So maybe it backs and fills and gives the longs another opportunity. By the way, that's not a bad, like if you really like a name for the long term, right? It's not a bad thing that a name, um, you know, gives you an out like that up at 42, up 5-6% for the day, right? Comes back, fills in a little bit, gives you a chance to re-add. And then if you really like it, hopefully it goes back out, right? And that's what I was talking about with Meta as well. All right, guys. So that's enough market talk for one afternoon. I hope the video helps. If you could like the video and make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, I'd appreciate that. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.